Hello, welcome to the Q&A for Polecat, the indie feature, with the filmmaker Haley here. Hey, Haley.
Hi, how's it going?
I'm Jason Wolos. I'm one of the programmers here at SF Indie Fest, and we're very fortunate to have Haley with us. Haley, congratulations.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, well, we're happy you're here too, and happy you completed the feature film. Not an easy task. Is this your first film?
It is definitely my first feature. I am typically a writer, so this was my biggest foray past student films.
Typically a writer, like you're writing for future films that you hope to be produced, or you're writing for other people. What kind of writing do you?
I came from visual art into writing, and then it took until after short films and film school a couple of years to realize that I my writer's voice is more of a director's voice.
Got it, got it.
Yeah.
And just a filmmaker question here. Do you recommend starting off with short films before doing a feature, or do you wish you just went right into your feature, or do you think, there's a path?
I feel like I don't I feel like it's what you're narratively called to. I've always
Mm.
been called to more long form storytelling. So the times that I did shorts in school, I was a little bit frustrated. But I do think it's a great practice in story payoff,
Yeah,
which I think really greatly it's a better micro experiment
yeah,
before going into features. But I do think I could have done more shorts before I did a feature, but this was, I think, a better learning experience and a better trial by fire, and to be completely honest, a better use of my money.
yeah, right,
Yeah.
right. Well, you're giving me so many questions to ask. So, what did you learn?
Yeah,
What's something you learned? What's something you learned about filmmaking and maybe about yourself from a feature
absolutely.
film on
Yeah.
Polecat?
Well, I will say that we aggregated, a certain amount of money that allowed us to shoot really low budget for 12 days. We were able to pay our crew. Most of our locations were free. We called in a lot of favors. And I think the biggest thing I learned about myself was that I the shooting was so stressful. I found out I had psoriasis.
Oh,
So I haven't gotten stress rashes like that since the shoot. But
interesting.
it is truly one of, I feel like I've been through a lot of stressful things in my life, and that 12-day duration was definitely the most intense thing I've ever been through. And that also comes from having no time or money, but you're really suffering for your art there.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Filmmaking is hard, and that's interesting. And so, what were some of the stressful moments? I mean, I know there's lots of things that you
Yeah.
deal with making a film, but what's some of the things that gave you stress, if I may ask?
Yeah. So, like I
Besides
said,
out of time, out of money, all that stuff.
totally. Yeah. Well, I mean, you have money for some things and you have not so much money for other things. So we were able to pay most of our cast, but we had a lot of like fill-ins and like bikers and extras and stuff. So, we were calling in so many favors that I found myself recasting or aggregating extras, during like between takes, furiously texting on my phone, because obviously we had a very large cast. We had a lot of people in it. We had way more people on screen than we had behind the camera. Our crew
Yeah,
probably topped out at 12 people. But we needed to put so many people on screen, that it was just constantly, yeah.
and being an indie filmmaker, you were doing some of that.
Totally.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
didn't have an extras casting person,
No,
right?
you don't have a casting person in general. So it's just like you and your producer furiously trying to like solve problems as they're coming. I mean, like, you just have to be, I think the biggest thing I learned as filmmakers, being able to roll with the punches, because just
Hmm.
like live events and theater, like what happens on the day is what happens, and you can only control that to a certain extent. Like you
Yeah,
can plan, you can be obsessive about pre-pro, but things are going to constantly go wrong, and your ability to roll with the punches and heal from that
yeah.
and create something better or create something different,
Right.
so that you preserve your story in the cutting room was like the
Yeah.
most important thing.
You kind of, to me, maybe described an aspect of the creative process, right? Rolling with it
Absolutely. Yeah.
or listening to it, especially with, you know, what the movie gods and goddesses kind of give you. Sometimes those gods and goddesses make it better, right? If you
Yeah.
will. Um,
Sometimes they give you gifts, and sometimes they give you intense challenges.
right, right, right. Do you really? How much do you really want this?
Yeah,
Well, well, you achieved it. The finished film is wonderful. It's really my favorite part in general is just the atmosphere you created.
thank you.
Yeah, I mean it has this texture, this moodiness.
Yeah,
Is it what you were striving for?
I think it is almost there. I think
Well, they're never finished, right? Our films are
no,
never.
yeah, I mean, I'm 28, and when we shot, I was towards the back half of 25. So this whole process is such a arduous long con that I feel like I know what I want to do as a filmmaker, and I just have to allow myself the grace and the time and the experience to get that exactly where I want to. And I'm sure I won't ever make it there. But I am so proud of the tone that we were able to capture and what we could create with color and sound and score at the end of the day that I feel like it is the best it could be. Your first feature is never going to be anybody's magnum opus. And the important part is getting through the process. So,
Unless you're Orson Welles with Citizen Kane, but
right.
yeah, as they say with filmmakers, it's like or filmmaking, it's like you never finish your film. You kind of just
Sure.
let it go. You give birth, and then it's out there, and it
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, you for your first film, very impressive.
Thank
So
you.
yeah,
I'm proud of
so
what we did.
yeah, you should be proud. How did it start though? How did you decide to make this film, write this script?
Yeah.
Is it from your life? Like why this one first? Why of all the other things you're writing, did this one
Yeah.
come to be?
Yeah, so I initially wrote Polecat at a point in my life where I was still in school and my grandfather was dying. And so I was going back to Gilkey, North Carolina a lot because half my family is hillbillies and the other is lowland rednecks. So I was going back there so much and I had started getting tattoos and I had pink hair. And to be completely honest, I was doing a lot of drugs and I felt a little alien going home and I was trying to sort through those feelings. So I think the way that I usually describe it is Polecat's story is not my story, but there are so many elements in there that were me processing what I was going through at the time.
Hmm.
Um, I think there's a sense of loss that kind of tents the whole movie, where it's not super obvious, it's not about grief, but I think that she's looking for something that she doesn't necessarily find in the end.
Hmm.
Because I think that's how more stories than not end.
Yeah.
I may have lost your question just a little bit.
Well, that's all right. Well, and then you inspired more questions. No,
Yeah,
basically, what inspired this project is the
yeah,
story. That it's not you, but there's a lot from
yeah,
your experience that you drew upon, and
totally.
I think I've heard this. I can't speak to where you're from, but it seems that it is a slice of what is going on down there, and
Yeah,
um, it's difficult, right?
yeah,
Below the Mason Dixon line, if you will.
totally. Yeah, I think there's I live in Los Angeles now and I work in marketing and I do tend to meet a lot of people who oversimplify the South. And kind of act like our country's problems are isolated to what is the poorest region of our country. Like
Mhm.
much political power comes from down there at all. And they seem to forget that there are a lot of people struggling with, like, I always talk about this God or drugs thing in the South where not many people have very much money. Like money looks really different in North Carolina than it does out here in Los Angeles. Like people out here are commonly buying like $1.2 million starter homes that are 2 bedrooms and have been built 70 years ago. But like, I mean, it just looks completely
Different
different.
planet.
Yeah, and it's really hard to get out, and it's really, really hard to find better things for you or your family. Like it's everything is just harder.
Yeah.
Um, and I think people forget about the people who live in the South.
Mhm.
And I mean, places like Gilkey and that part of the Appalachia too are were really affected by the mill closures in the 90s
Sure.
that took a
Sure.
lot of the money out of those towns. So then, I
Yeah.
mean, there really isn't a lot of choice
Yeah.
between alcohol or drugs for your
Right,
antidepressant.
right. I'm from Buffalo, New York. I have family in Pennsylvania, not too far from,
Yeah,
below. So kind of I see it or can relate to it a little bit.
yeah,
But can I ask you a personal question?
totally.
How'd you get out?
I sheer will.
I mean, because you
I
said you kind of
yeah,
had some of these characteristics of our lead characters, our characters in this
absolutely.
movie, and
Yeah,
no small feat
yeah.
getting past that or growing out of that or whatever, escaping.
Yeah, I mean, I think back on it sometimes, and I think that alien feeling kind of persisted, so I felt like I needed to go somewhere. But when I did my taxes at the end of the year that I moved, like I was working three jobs in a coffee shop and a couple of restaurants. And I was also candidly selling edibles to try just like to put into this moving fund to try to leave. And it's obviously really expensive to move, much less to a big city where you kind of just like have to hand off a bunch of money for a deposit to
Yeah,
somebody you don't know, and they could just steal all of your money.
right.
But I think I made $9,000 that year. And I just remember I wasn't doing anything but working in Winston-Salem. I was
Wow.
doing nothing but working, and I kind of don't know how. It's
Right,
sheer will, and I don't think I saw much of an alternative.
right. Wow, that's impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, because if you think back about the obstacle, the mountain in front of you, it's
Yeah.
intimidating. But
Yeah, especially when nobody thinks you can do it
right,
and everybody thinks you'll come back.
yeah, and now you made a feature film, which is also an incredible feat in itself.
Yeah. And I'm glad
Um,
I was able to come home to do it. So a lot of
yeah.
those hometown
so
filmmakers.
yeah, you went back home to film it,
Yeah. Yeah, it was all shot in North Carolina, mostly in the Winston-Salem and King area.
and tell us a little bit about filming there. How was it? Did you get a lot of cooperation? Did you get
Yeah.
inspiration? What was it like?
Yeah, like I kind of mentioned earlier, I have complex feelings about the South, but I think people really helped us a lot, um, way more than I feel like they would anywhere else. Absolutely. There was a man who old man, probably 88, 90 years old, let us have our run of his land. We shot at least seven scenes on his property and in his house. And our
Wow,
car flip was weirdly one of the cheapest things we did. We flipped the car for $250 because we bought the car from a Mennonite boy who was just knocking off $100 every time he found something else wrong with it. And then this old man flipped it for us with his tractor. And then we scrapped the parts. So
wow.
yeah, I feel like everybody did us a lot of favors, and we really only did pay for one location.
Let me backtrack a little bit on the topic we were talking about. So at the character end, she thought she'd get out of her hometown, right?
Yeah.
Does she get out? She didn't get out, does she? I
Not
mean,
that, no, I
not
think
then,
not. No, I wonder. You
because
think
you end. It's kind of an interesting ending. I like that it's open ended, if you will, and but it's also what happens next. The
yeah.
audience. So tell us about that ending.
Yeah. Um,
I mean, you kind of just leave it to the audience, and is that the way you intended it all along, where it's just kind of like they survived this far? What's next?
yeah. Yeah, I think that the end, I feel like the audience owes at least finding out if they're, alive. Uh,
Yeah,
but I think that a happily ever after just doesn't exist. Um, and as much as I maybe one day I'll explore that more for my own hope in humanity and
right.
pleasant delusion. But I thought that the ending was a way to say that they're alive, um, and that things are fine, but you don't know what's going to happen in the
Yeah,
future. And I felt like it wasn't really a story that could be wrapped up with a bow, but you can't give a viewer no payoff.
right, right,
Yeah.
right, right. They invested in a story, but there's truthfulness to it, right? It's like
Yeah.
sometimes it's just is, if
Yeah.
you will.
Sometimes the
Um,
fact that you're alive is
It's enough. I mean,
Yeah,
it's pretty darn good.
totally.
Um, and then back to the story too. I wanted to ask, you open with the phone recording message. The phone. I think it's the grandma or maybe the grandpa or
Yeah,
relatives leaving messages.
yeah.
What's that about? Like, I'm sorry if I don't get it, but
No, it's fine.
uh, I guess there's information there. What's it about? Tell me about it before I.
I think I think that maybe that's a little bit more relative to how maybe I felt at that point in my life, but I think that there's something to be said for at least the grandma's message conveying um, potentially a little bit of a strained relationship,
Uh,
or at least some sort of misunderstanding that may have made her feel alienated. And I feel like that if that's something that somebody would call to apologize about, it's probably a little bit of a habitual thing. I also think I wanted to show that she was pulling away a little bit, perhaps because of that feeling or because of something else. We don't get a really clear background on it, but I
right.
think there's a sense of her feeling disconnected from some of
Yeah.
the pinnacle pieces of her life.
Yeah. And I just realized too, it set up the locale and the atmosphere and
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
geography, even just in her voice, right? Or in
Yeah, it's a very
her
specific
accent.
accent. Yeah,
Yeah, which is nice. I
yeah,
didn't, it just came to me now. I was like, oh, wait a minute, but it also put me in that place,
totally.
just hearing those messages.
Yeah.
And then the production value is excellent too. Like I said, you create this great sense of location, mood, atmosphere. The acting's really well done.
Cool.
How'd you do it? First feature film.
Well, I mean, I
Did you have these actors in mind already? Did you cast? Was it a long process? I mean,
so I went to the North Carolina School of the Arts,
okay.
which is beautifully, I'm pretty sure the only state-funded conservatory in our hemisphere. Uh, it's a really special little place, nestled in the foothills of North Carolina.
I think I've seen
So
it advertised in Movie Maker magazine, maybe.
maybe.
Yeah, okay.
But I had some friends from there, so like that's pretty much where all of our crew came from. And we borrowed some students. But it was mostly kind of like me and my producer and my cinematographer and pretty much everybody else we graduated with.
I see.
But I had known Claire, our actress, from school because she read for the fourth year film that I wrote. And I really, really loved her reading, and the director ended up going for somebody else. And I just always wanted to work with her.
Ah,
I thought her accent was amazing. She doesn't have it in normal day-to-day life. She's from South Carolina, so she nails it every time.
huh,
Uh, and I felt really compelled to work with her. So we called her for a reading, and then Jeremy, our lead actor, um, also went to school, was a couple years behind. He read really well, and then they ended up doing really well. This was also when we were casting via Zoom. So
right,
our reading was our first reading in person was really 3 or 4 days before we shot. Everyone else in the there were very few other actors.
right, right.
It was a
So,
lot of non-actors.
so
Yeah.
you cast them the days before shooting?
No, we cast them months before, but everything
Okay,
we've done up until that point had been
I
on Zoom.
see.
So we
I
weren't
see.
in person together doing readings and
Well,
rehearsals.
as you said, like she was always in your mind.
Yeah.
Get she embodies the character
Yeah.
well. I mean, she's amazing,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? I mean, she's really believable, and we're really invested in her. And here's an ignorant question: what does
Totally.
polecat mean? Where'd that name come from? Did I miss
Yeah.
that? Was that explained in the film, or?
No, I don't think anybody would know unless they asked. A polecat is a colloquialism for a weasel. Uh,
Ah,
so it's I think an endearing way to call someone sneaky. And I think
Nikki.
that
Okay.
the way that they get themselves out of their conundrum at the end
Yes.
is Weasley and is acknowledging their sort of resourceful hickness to
Yeah.
get out of an issue that, their sneakiness got them, their resourcefulness got them in the first place. I'm gonna
Interesting.
call it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's neat. And where did you learn that word? Where did you hear that word? Did you have that title in mind when you were writing, or did that
Yeah.
come before or after?
I had the title in my head when writing, so it's always been her nickname.
Got it.
I think the decision to not share her name through the whole thing was something that helped Claire in her process too, because her and me are the only people who know what her name is, and I let her find it.
Sure.
Um, but I don't know where I heard it for the first time. I think it's always been in my little Southern vocabulary.
Yeah. Well, now it's in my vocabulary, our vocabulary, the audience's
Yeah.
vocabulary. Very cool. How
Totally.
was your directing approach with
Mhm.
these two main characters? Did your lead actor, did she kind of just find it on her own? Did you have to give a lot of suggestions? Did she ask for a lot of advice?
We were really close in the process. Her and Claire and Jeremy are both they were trained in very different schools of acting. So me and Claire got really, really close, and Jeremy was really quick and really perceptive and could kind of turn the character on and off like a light switch. By the time we
Mhm.
got into production, Claire is really emotional and very physically driven and in her body. So I think a lot of our process together was letting her feel that and getting her into the spaces where she could. So before we did production, we would just like we'd have character meetings. We'd just get in and talk about it and talk through the place and what we thought the rest of her life looked like. And I sent them both care packages before we shot of like artifacts from their characters' lives. So
Cool.
a lot of it was I opened up my memory boxes and like pulled out pieces of things that might be things from their parents or might be things from their home or like textiles or pieces of clothing um and photos of who knows what family members, but for them to kind of create those characters with me.
What made you think of that idea? It's a clever idea to
I
send the
don't
care
know.
package.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's great. I'm going to keep that in
Oh
mind
right.
for my future.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean you can go to there are a lot of places like scrap exchanges where there
No,
are
no, but just I wonder if you got it from like you heard about another director doing that, or it's
no,
just it's a great way to help
yeah.
the actors.
It's
And
fun right.
yeah, how did they respond to that gift?
Yeah, I think Claire really seemed to like it. I think
Mhm.
it gave her a lot of artifacts to invest in.
Yeah,
It brought a tactile nature that's not just words on a page.
right,
Yeah.
right. So, is there something by completing this film you've learned about yourself? Say both, as filmmaker and
Yeah.
as person.
Yeah. I think as a filmmaker, it's really easy to eat, sleep, and breathe movies. And that be all you think about and all you talk about from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to sleep, because it is beautiful and it is a wonderful art form that you identify with and find humanity in. And I think the biggest thing I learned through this process is that cannot be the only thing you care about and not the only thing to focus on, because not only will you run out of things to write about, but you will also drive yourself crazy. Uh, this process obviously took we did it pretty fast, honestly, and it still took us a solid 2 years.
Yeah,
And I learned that I need more creative payoff in my life because I mean, this process is just so long and arguably never ends. There's so much business side to it that uh, I needed more creative outlets. So
yeah,
I got a lot of hobbies the past couple of years,
yeah.
and I'm feeling like a well-rounded person.
Right on. Well said. Very true.
Yeah.
It takes some artists, some filmmakers, a lot longer to figure that out.
Yeah.
So good for you. Uh, and what do you hope audiences come away with after watching your
I
movie?
hope
Yeah,
I hope for a sense of empathy, um, and a sense of understanding of struggles that aren't represented in cinema a lot.
yeah.
I think there's some really incredible films that portray the South, and I still don't think there are enough that are mainstream.
Right, right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and also just it's nice that movies even maybe they have representation, but
Yeah.
they need the reminders. We still
Totally.
we get engulfed in our daily lives, and it's like, oh yeah, there's others. It's not just our world.
Totally. It's a
And
complex experience. The South is not
complex
a monolith,
experience.
you know?
And we think you captured the nice slice of life of where you're talking about, the locations you're talking about from your experiences. So well done.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to add that I didn't ask you or you want to bring up before we sign off here?
Um, no, I think this has been a great conversation.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I could keep talking, but we'll leave it to other conversations.
Please.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Happy
well done, and thanks for submitting to our film festival. We're glad you did.
Absolutely, me too.
All right. Well, good luck to you. I hope to meet you in person,
Thank you so much.
and we'll see you around. Keep making movies.
Sounds
Thanks for
good.
watching, everybody. That's been another Q&A for SF Indie Fest. Thanks, Haley, with Polecat. Good luck to you. Ciao.